know yourself. I think at the core of everything, like think of this like oh, what are those things called? It's not the merry-go-round. You see them at like it just turns around. But if you stand in the center, you just you'll be turned around on your axis. But if you hold on to the edges, you can like be flung off. The point is, think of it like a vinyl record. The place on the vinyl record when it's spinning that it spins the least is the center, not the outer edge. Outer edge, it moves the fastest, the quickest. And if you're starting something, you got to know who you are. Or if you're looking to find who you are, start a business. I'm saying that it will expose who you are. You will find out who you are. But the thing is that when you're starting a business, you will have 1,000 decisions, 1,000 questions, so many things that you just don't know what's up, and you need something that you can find a firm foundation on.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Scott Williams. Scott started his journey in high school, and he wasn't quite clear what he wanted to do after high school and as growing up. But I had a friend that wanted to be a dentist or an orthodontist, so kind of thought initially in that direction, but also had grown up and wanted to go into ministry, and so decided to go into the seminary. And then he decided that he didn't want to go in that direction as much anymore after a little while, so I ended up going into sales. And then after that, moved over into a sales agency, and then started his own marketing agency, I think from his mom's basement, and grew that over the period of 9 years. Shifted the focus more to nonprofits, from helping them to market to raise money. And then after that, found it was difficult to find and utilize the data for the nonprofits, so built a CRM to address some of those issues. So with that much as a introduction, welcome to the podcast, Scott.
Thanks, Devin. Excited to be here, man.
Hey, well, excited to have you on. So, I just gave a quick run through to a much longer journey, but why don't we rewind and unpack that a bit? Tell us a little bit about how your journey got started there in high school.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, you hit it at the head of the park there with the summary. It's really good. So, man, I remember like going all the way back to high school. I just remember sitting down with my best friend. His name's Ben, and we'd eat those rectangle pizzas. It was this terrible cardboard pizza, and we'd be sitting there, and we'd be talking about our future and what we wanted it to look like. And mine was always a little bit nebulous. I didn't know where it was going to go. Didn't have a strong desire to move in one direction or the other. But Ben, he wanted to be a dentist, and he knew that from the get-go. As a matter of fact, let me fast forward a couple years in the future. We sold books door to door in Florida for one summer, he and I, and it was terrible. It was the worst thing. It was not fun at all. However, one thing that I learned about my friend at that time is that he is dedicated, and he knew what he wanted to do, and he put his head down and he went after it. So much so that like while we were supposed to be selling books, even though it was not fun to do, he would go to the library for several hours at the public library in Florida and just read books on dentistry. And I just remember thinking, man, this guy loves what he's going to be doing, and he's preparing himself for that. Unfortunately, I didn't have a similar vision. And so, well, what am I going to do?
Well, so just before you get too far, I just do have one question, which is selling books door to door. What books do you normally? Is this like back in the day when it was encyclopedia sets, or kind of was it like what kind of books? I don't know that I've ever had a book salesman knock on my door and ask me if I wanted to buy a book. So kind of what books do you sell door to door?
I love that. Yeah. So I'm not going to give the whole pitch here, but listen, it's a company called Southwestern. And they used to sell, and they kind of, I think they still do. I looked at it a few years ago, but it's something called the Student Handbook. And what it was a 7-volume set. You really tried to sell the first 2 of the 7 volumes, and it's really like teaches you and helps you with a lot of like homework, like, hey, math, how do you do this, like that kind of stuff. Now, I'm an old cat, so like, listen, I'm mid 40s and I did this in college, so we're talking about pre-internet explosion. And so this would make very, very little sense now, other than just feeling bad for a college kid and throwing 20 bucks his way, right? But no, back then, man, it was internet wasn't a competing factor. And so it was, how do I help my son or daughter who's 14 learning about pre-calculus? This is out of my depths as a parent. And so that's what we would sell is these handbooks that help out with that day-to-day sort of stuff. And then the internet came. I was out of the book selling game, so it didn't affect me, but I can imagine that pretty, that took a hit for them. Now chat GPT as well, like all that kind of stuff. It's a massacre now. But that's what I did.
All right, fair enough. I was just curious. I said even as far back as I can remember, I've never had a door-to-door book salesman come to the door. So I was just curious on that. So now you do, so you do that, or I delve into your journey. But you're saying, hey, your friend knew what he was going to do, and you weren't quite as clear on necessarily what you wanted to do, kind of as you were growing up. So kind of pick up your journey from there.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And so what happened at that moment is, well, I'll go to college because that's what kids do, right? And so, that was part of the culture. So I went to college, went to Ohio University down in Athens, Ohio for a couple of years, transferred to Ashland University, which is my hometown. Finished up there. During that time, I thought, man, and there's a seminary here. I love Jesus. Let's go learn about all that kind of stuff and let's do that. Worked at a church for a few years while I was doing that. And so, hey, I'm going to be go down the minister route. Did that for a few years in terms of working in a church full time, got a religion degree from Ashland University, went to seminary for a year. I was really on the track. And then, man, it just wasn't for me full time. That shouldn't be my profession. So that was clear, but I didn't know what to do. Also at this time, I met a girl, fell in love. Like it's the whole story. Fell in love, got married. We have 3 kids.
Sorry, one just question. When you're, because, great, there's, I think it's admirable to go into seminary, to have that desire to serve and to share on your religion. Now, kind of as you're going down that path, and it sounds like you got a good ways down the path, kind of what was it, or was there a triggering point, or you said, hey, I don't, I'm not cut out for doing this type of work, or hey, I found that I have a passion over here. Kind of, what was the trigger point to decide, hey, I'm going to make a switch or a change?
Great question, Devin. I think often people don't really know why they make a change truly until you have a lot of time for retrospection. Like in the moment you do something and you say, hey, I think this is what's up. And uh, I think now in retrospect, when I look back, I think that I'm not long for institutional things, like things that clamp down on me. That I'm a little bit more of a free bird than that. And so, what I found a lot within organized religion and the expression of that most clearly in the Christian church, in any denomination really, is that um, in my soul, the politics of inside the church, I just couldn't square that up inside my soul. And I don't think I had the skill set at the time. I don't even know if I do now to manage that. And so loving Jesus ain't enough. You gotta have other skill sets that felt to me like it was more of it wasn't a core competency of who I was. It was more of an outreach. And that would have ultimately been a very big drain on me as a person. So that's all the retrospection. It wasn't that present of mind when when I was quitting that whole path. But yeah, I guess our lights just went out a little bit. But anyways, that's the story behind that.
No, that makes sense. So now you say, okay, going in a different direction. Sounds like you met a girl, fell in love, went in a different direction. So, kind of walk us through how that part of the journey evolved.
Yeah, so if I was going to be a minister, even though that doesn't pay a lot of money, it does pay some money. And so now I got to figure out something else that will pay some money at least. And so I didn't know what to do. I sold books before. I don't know. I guess I could go into sales. So that's what I did. I just went into sales for about a decade. Didn't have a love or passion for any industry at all. Did that for a decade, and then a decade later, oh, in the midst of all of that, I'd sold a lot of things. Like it was, I worked at Sprint. I was in the education division of Sprint. I was in the B2B vision of Verizon Wireless. I sold concrete resurfacing. I sold awnings. I sold a lot of different things just to kind of like make some money and figure out life. I think a lot of people do that, you know? And so then the next job that I got after a decade or so was working at an advertising agency that their primary 80% of their work was building websites for small businesses. But that other 20% was a lot of marketing stuff. And so when I joined that team, I was selling websites, but over a period of a year, I absolutely fell in love with marketing, just 100% all in. This is the industry. And then I started remembering, hold on a second. I'm remembering how Ben was in college. I mean, I'm sorry, in high school at lunch, and how he would steal time away from selling books, which is not hard to do because it's terrible, but steal time away from there to go read books at a public library in Florida because he loved this thing so much where he was headed. And I started seeing myself do those things that my heart naturally was running toward. I want to learn everything I possibly can about marketing in the digital age. So I kept doing that. I kept doing that. And something inside of me just turned on. So I did that for another year, a year and a half, maybe, something like that. And then during that time, I had a vision of what I think the company could do that I was working at. The owner of that company, rightfully so, he can do whatever he'd like, didn't share my vision. I'm absolutely boiling this thing down to its irreducible core here. But it did get me thinking, like, wait a second, I think we could do this. And so in the fall of 2015, that's when I quit the job and started my own digital marketing agency. And so that's where kind of like the big part of my business life story begins. You know what I mean? Everything else before that, if you think of that as like the work product, lawyers often will, as you know, they have work product, the stuff that gets you to your eventual thing. And so the work product is like, it's like showing your work in a math equation, you know, it's like, it's that sort of stuff. And so that's where we are right now, is that we were, 9 years ago in 2015, is it felt like everything that had gotten to that moment was setting me up for this. And again, everything is in retrospect. So that's where we ended up. And so in 2015 in the fall, I just had this, I need to go do my own thing. So that's what I did. And to your exact point earlier, Devin, this is like, you know how they always say on the West Coast in like the 80s and 90s when the internet was just beginning to explode and all the infrastructure was getting built, that kind of stuff. There's the stories about Steve Jobs, Hewlett Packard, all that kind of stuff. When they were making these computers, they did it in the garage. Well, I think the Midwest version of that is like in your mom's basement. And so that's exactly what I did. Um, at this point, and still now, 3 kids, married, all of that. But my youngest, at the time of me quitting to start my own agency, with not a lot of money in the bank account, we had a 6-week old, our third kid, 6-week old. And I said, hey, this is a great time to quit the only job that makes me money and make no money for a long time. It's a crazy proposition. As a matter of fact, my pitch to my wife, her name's Ann. I said, Ann, here's what I want to do. We have savings. I want to drain that savings almost all the way down to nothing. Then I'm going to build a business on the back of that. And it's going to be like 5 years before we ever get back to where we currently are right now. What do you think? She's like, terrible pitch, but I see what you see. Obviously, there's a lot more details. That's the negative side of it. But it's important to understand the negative side. And so we kind of laid all that out. She said, let's go, let's drain it. I said, amazing. So we did that. That was what started off. I quickly invited a friend who was just leaving a greenhouse for the winter. And I said, hey, come hang out with me and let's build some content and do all this stuff. He's still with us today, 9 years later. His name's Jared. He was early on. But then from there, it just slowly grew. But the biggest thing that I think I learned in those early couple of years is the main advice that I heard as a digital marketer and starting a digital marketing agency, the main advice was always this: you got to find your niche. Go choose a niche and go after it and go win. And so that's what we did. We created many different marketing funnels to go after niches and professional services. Lawyers were one of them, Devin. We also had a whole bunch of professional service, another financial services, financial advisors, retirement homes, like those kind of things, just going after individual things, building funnels, landing pages. Devin, you're a serial entrepreneur. Oh my gosh, you've started a million companies. So you know what I'm talking about, is you do all these things. And then here's what happened is that nobody responded. Like it wasn't working. What is happening? And I'm a digital, like I know what I'm doing, like everything looks right. Like it's just not, and we were getting some traction, so it's not about, but I just not as much as I thought. And so anyways, I ended up realizing that I need to stop chasing vertical markets and let vertical markets find me. And so what I
Just
did,
one
go
quick
ahead.
follow over what period of time? So, I mean, because you started in the digital agency, sounds like you did quite a bit of work. Was that over the course of 6 months, 6 years, 20 years? Kind of walk us through how long you were going down that original path before you decided to make that shift.
Love it. 2015, end of 2015 started down. Well, first year really is like, who are we? What are we doing? And that was just, it felt like every single day for the first year was learning something new and then realizing that that's not for us. So we trash it. And then next day, same thing, trash it. And it just felt like we were spinning our wheels for almost a full year. Uh, I mean, we had a little bit of traction here and there, but man, it just felt like we were banging our head against the wall. And then the next year, a full year is when we were chasing after all these verticals and we were building all these funnels. That's what people said. And but and if we kept with it, maybe it would have worked. I don't know. But we did it for a full year, went pretty nuts with it. But what we ended up doing is after that year was done, that second year, and we said, hold on a second, how do we actually grow this company? And it kind of hit me. Let's just, it sounds silly. I just got to go make money. I'm just going to go make money and kind of say yes and build a parachute on the way down. Just forget about building the parachute, then jumping. I got to do this while we're on the way down. So that's what we did. And by this time, there were 7 people on the team or so. And so it's grown from me to 7 through all this struggle. Who are we? That kind of stuff. And we started saying yes to everybody. And then all of a sudden, something happened. The local university that I got my degree from called Ashland University. And she said, her name's Amanda. And she said, all right, I need a video because we're a digital marketing agency. We produce a lot of things. I need a video for this giving day that we're going to be doing for Ashland University. And I said, sounds great. Something like that would be a few $1,000s, whatever. And she said, oh, I only have $700 in my budget. And I said, sold. I'll do it for $700. Doesn't matter. Let's go. This is my alma mater. I get to work with a big university. And then she said, okay, great. I'll give you a call a little bit later. And this was right before Thanksgiving. I didn't hear from her until after the new year. And I screwed it up. My one opportunity to work with alma mater or whatever, just didn't pitch it right. Or maybe I seemed too eager. I didn't know. She called back at the turn of the year and she said, I found more money in the budget. $700. It's not that anymore. I actually have $10,000. What can we do with 10,000? And I'm like, what? Like I'm absolutely blown away. I mean, this is the time where we need money, and this is so good. And so we start working with them, make some fun videos, do this whole thing, blow it out. It's great. But then they say, hold on, we're starting a campaign for our university and we'd love for you to be at the table. So I sit down and I start learning about this campaign and oh my gosh, Devin, this thing, what they were looking to do was the biggest thing that we had ever even dreamed of doing at our small little digital marketing agency that was right downtown from the university, like very, very close. And of the 7 people that worked there at the time at Vinyl Marketing, 5 of them were alma maters, so like very close ties with Ashland University. We know the place very well. But they invited us into a conversation to discover what a big comprehensive campaign for their university would be. Now, here's how this works. that when you're looking to raise money for a nonprofit, you typically, if it's large, you typically start with something called a feasibility study. That feasibility study basically says how much money can your organization raise based on the donor relations that you currently have. So that came back saying $30 million. You can raise $30 million. Cool. But the problem was is that the financial situation and a whole lot of things that came to it, they said we actually need to raise 50 million. So that 70% or so uptick is a massive no-no in fundraising. The main reason for that is because it protects leadership. If feasibility study says 30 million and you say 35 million, then you got egg on your face, let alone 50 million. This is a 70% uptick. It's a problem. We can't get 20 extra $1 million. Where's it going to come from? We don't got it. So that was the issue. And we came with a pretty, it was a strategy that works very well in the horizontal market, but vertical market in higher education, it just hasn't gotten there yet. And it's just building a basic digital marketing funnel and then exploding that over and over and then just making it all work together. And what we did ultimately is that we said we're going to couch it within, we're going to tell stories of Ashland University. We're going to walk around, we're going to get stories from up to 1,000 people over the course of the next 5 to 6 years. And we're going to tell hundreds of stories a year of Ashland University. And what that will do is it will drive engagement. And when it drives engagement, it will drive eyeballs. And if it drives eyeballs, it will drive affinity. And affinity comes with money. And so it's a long game. We need to keep it going down all the way through, but eventually money will come. Let us tell stories for a year, and then this thing is going to trickle down. And they said, we see what you see. Let's go. So we ran their campaign for 5 years. I'm going to fast forward just a little bit because a year and a half ago at the end of 2022, we ended that campaign that was feasibility study said 30 million. They came public saying we need 50 million. Year and a half ago, we concluded it. It wasn't 30, it wasn't 50. It ended up at $109 million. And so this thing got blown out of the water. It did very, very well. The wild thing is that through this whole time, as we were getting better and better at helping nonprofits raise money, Ashland University wasn't the only one. We started working with other institutions like University of Nebraska, a lot of other regional universities. All in all, probably 24 universities at any given time just working on stuff, just cranking out stuff for nonprofits who are looking to raise money for fundraising, giving days, comprehensive campaigns, that kind of stuff. And now, Devin, here's the thing, man. That's okay. Now we're going to start talking about a new epoch of time because all of that meant that we were in data all the time. Because when we're running these campaigns, we're doing it because we want it to be data driven. And the problem is every time that we were running with these campaigns and data is flowing in and out, we could see all the data that's not there, that's being lost, that's not able to be tracked in these systems. It's you put this system and you integrate it with this one and this one and this one, and how do you get all this data? Well, there's data lakes and there's data warehouses, and how do you suss all that out? But each of these things, yeah, that's where the raw data can live, but the system, is it usable? And so we just saw all these problems for years and years and years. When right now there are 26 people that work at Vinyl Marketing, but they also work at another company. We kind of on parallel tracks are building this software and have been for 18 months called High Tide. High Tide is a customer relationship management software, CRM, akin to like Salesforce, HubSpot, that kind of stuff, but it's for nonprofits. And what we found is that the dozen or so, dozen and a half or so CRMs that are out there on the market for nonprofits, they all are just lacking. We've used a ton of them, and it's just really about the way that it starts out. It's first principle thinking. Everybody takes a right when you build a CRM. We took a left, and so that's the big thing right now. But right now we are trying to wrangle data for nonprofits, and that's what High Tide is all about. Does that make sense, Devin?
That's awesome. So now you're watching. You said here, how long ago did you start High Tide, or how long ago did you build the CRM? Kind of how long has it been going?
Yeah, so the whole high tide story really started 18 months ago, 19 months ago now. Very beginning of 2023. I've known this guy named Tim for 20 plus years. We've been friends for a really long time. We've always worked together on projects, but he is just excellent at he's an engineer, he's a developer, he's a code guy. He knows how to build a bunch of stuff. And so I said, hey, you know what? We're having all these issues with all the tech stuff. Why don't you come here and let's see if we can build something? I have no idea what we're going to build. Come on the team. This is Jim Collins wrote a book From Good to Great. And one of the first things he says in there, you get the right people on the bus and figure out where they sit later. And so for me, that's what it was. Tim, you're the right guy. Come on the bus. Let's figure out where you sit later. And he said, let's go. And so he joined the team. The first 6 months really was about what are we going to build? And we went through a bunch of iterations. We had all these problems that myself and several people on the team have been just really putting out problems for years and years and years and how we might be able to solution on them. And we had, I don't know, 30, 40 ideas that were all viable. But there was this one when we did this matrix of effort versus impact, that the one in the upper right-hand chart was the CRM. It's to fix the whole thing, not just a tiny little aspect of all the data problems and confusions that we were experiencing for years. But it was fixing the whole thing, and it was the CRM. It was the core record of truth. This is where everything should fit and live. And it's as we dug into it a little bit more, we realized that the way people were building it is just it's broken from the get-go. And so we started to play around with that for 6 months, and we came out with some pretty amazing technology breakthroughs that we didn't work quite expecting that allowed for full customization within a CRM. It's akin to like 20 years ago, if you wanted a website, you had to talk to somebody who knew code, who knew how to build the whole entire thing. But then somebody along the way said, hey, Joe Blow should be able to build their own website too. So let's put a layer on top of this code that makes it very easy for individuals with no code to be able to build this thing visually. So that's Wix, that's Squarespace, that's that kind of stuff. What we built, High Tide, is Wix. Like Wix is for websites, we are that for custom CRMs. Is that we have built a CRM builder, whereas they built a CRM, I'm sorry, a website builder. We built, and then you launch your website. We have a CRM builder, and then you launch your CRM. And because it's a CRM builder, because it's custom, we can take data in exactly how it is. These are all industry first kind of things. And so we're really excited about where this is. But the first 6 months was really, what are we going to build? The next 6 months was really testing the idea. And then the last 6 months has been about building out a minimum viable product ready. And next week, we're going live with it. So it's been an 18, 19-month journey, and we're about ready to see if the world agrees with us or not. So that's kind of nuts.
Well, that's exciting. It's always both exciting as well as an anxious time. Exciting because you put in a ton of time and effort to get it to the point where it's at. Have a lot of high anticipations and a lot of expectations, and then now you get to pull the trigger and see how it goes. See if it goes as you anticipate, or see if you get a retool or figure something else out. So definitely will be fun to watch and see kind of how it goes and how it iterates. So
yeah, man. And so let me get into that real quick, because I think this is an interesting bit. If somebody is listening to this and they're like, all right, cool, tell me, I think that this is really interesting because all right, let me start here, man. Startups are not faint for the faint of heart. They're just not. Devin, you know this, dude. You've done it a billion times. But I'm telling you, this is hard. It will do things to your soul that you didn't quite expect. It will make you softer in places. It will make you harder in places. It's going through the fire, man. This is the refiner's fire, and you have to be ready for it, you know? And so let me tell you the story. Early this year in February, we went to market. And when we went to market, we did it just for brand purposes, just to get our name out there. to test some digital marketing aspects. Remember, High Tide is coming from a team who are already digital marketers, so we know how to do all this. And that's what we've been doing for 9 years, is doing digital marketing and building brands, doing creative work, that kind of thing. So I thought, hey, building this thing is not easy, but this is stuff that we do all the time. It's work to do, but it's just the process to go through. And so we went through a big branding thing early on. Man, we learned a lot from February to March, a little bit into April. Then we switched from there into lead generation. Let's get some leads and try to sell this thing. Now, Devin, I just told you next week we're launching it. Means that in May, almost the whole month of May, we tried to sell this thing and it doesn't exist, you know? And so we're just talking about what our concepts are and like, let me show you a few things live, but it's probably going to break because we're still in development kind of stuff. And dude, here's the industry standard is from an SQL, sales qualified lead. You're trying to get a 10% conversion rate within software as a service industry, SaaS. You want a 10% conversion rate into sales. And so if you have 100 people that you're demoing, you should sell 10. And this is our first entry into the market. That's for an SQL. MQL is higher in the funnel. And we were just getting MQLs and we sold 8 of them, 8 out of 100. So we're on to something, but dude, we are not even close to figuring this thing out yet. And so that was in May. Then we've kind of shut down things a little bit to finish up MVP because I just wanted to go to the market to feel the business and what it was going to take to do. Then we finished out MVP. We're launching next week. Marketing is going to launch the week after that or so. And this is the moment that we move into whether this thing is going to work or not, man. So if anybody watching this wants to check out hightide.com, check out our socials to see whether this thing works or not, this is the moment that it all starts. And so it's going to be fun.
Yeah, and excited, and we'll definitely invite you and make sure that you can share how people can kind of follow along, see how the launch goes. We'll save that to the end, just there as a way that people can reach out and follow you, and otherwise engage.
Sounds good.
And now, as we've kind of caught up to the present day of the journey, and even kind of looking a bit into the future as to hopefully where things are headed and kind of how the launch might go. Great time to transition to the 2 questions I'd like to ask towards the end of each episode. So we're going to jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about this and I wanted to go tactical here, but then like have a little bit of like understanding as to why that is, which might lead into the second one. But early in the first part, 4-6 months in, somewhere around there, when I first started, so this is like in the spring of 2016, I pulled the trigger on buying HubSpot. And when I bought HubSpot, I bought it was like $800 a month. It was a lot of money for a startup. So we're talking about almost 10 grand for the year, and I had to pay for it annually up front. And I was going to be I was an agency partner and like all this kind of stuff. Here's my point is I had my head over my skis. I'm that type of person who's like, let's go. If it makes sense to me, let's pull the trigger. And most of the time that's not really detrimental. And this wasn't. And buying a piece of software before you need it isn't going to kill you. But $10,000 is not money that I had at that time. You know what I mean? Like it was really a detrimental thing. And ultimately I think the worst business decision doesn't sound like it's a huge one, but that one to me really helped me to regulate myself, that I needed to know who I was. And so anyways, I think that's my biggest early, like it felt almost soul crushing at that time. And I have made bigger and worse mistakes since that time, but I think because of the refiner's fire that is starting a business, it's made me a lot more able to take some of the harder things but that was the first big one, and it just like hit my soul really hard, and it always sticks with me.
Hey, sometimes it's those earlier ones that sometimes that are the most impactful, or at least they're the ones that stay with you the longest and tend to continue to resonate and give you some good learnings as you wish you could go back and maybe change things, but never an option. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Second question now that I like to ask is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
You got to know yourself. I think at the core of everything, like think of this like oh, what are those things called? It's not the merry-go-round. You see them at like it just turns around. But if you stand in the center, you just you'll be turned around on your axis. But if you hold on to the edges, you can like be flung off. The point is, think of it like a vinyl record. The place on the vinyl record when it's spinning that it spins the least is the center, not the outer edge. Outer edge, it moves the fastest, the quickest. And if you're starting something, you got to know who you are. Or if you're looking to find who you are, start a business. I'm saying that it will expose who you are. You will find out who you are. But the thing is that when you're starting a business, you will have 1,000 decisions, 1,000 questions, so many things that you just don't know what's up, and you need something that you can find a firm foundation on. And that thing is knowing yourself and knowing who you are and those sort of things. One step beyond that goes back to the religion stuff for me is Jesus, but I'm saying like that is my core identity. And so everything else from that, it just flings out nice and easy. It's fine. It's still challenging and hard, but know yourself because you're in for a lot of strife, a lot of challenges. And that is the first and foremost thing because it'll get you through it.
Awesome. Well, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway for all business owners to take or keep in mind and take to heart. So, well, now as we are wrapping towards the end of the episode for today, I would or want to or have you share kind of if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, or in the cases you mentioned, they want to follow along and see how the launch goes and continue along your journey. What's the best way to reach out to you, connect up with you, or find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. There's just a few things. Hightide.com. You can go check it out if you're interested in what we've built from a CRM standpoint for nonprofits. And then on any of the social platforms, it's High Tide Software. So those are the two places to best find. And I'm Scott at hightide.com if anybody wants to chat with me. But man, this is great. Devin, you're the best, dude. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Awesome. We'll definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, follow along, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So, with that, thank you again, Scott, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you, the listeners are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be guests on the podcast or our more recently launched and Inventive Fireside webinar series, we'd love to have you on either end or both. So, just go to inventiveunicorn.com, apply to be on the shows. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. It helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And along that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Scott, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Awesome. Thanks, Devin.